he's written. I first got acquainted with him by reading the book, What's So Great About Christianity, which in my opinion was one of the most important books written in the last decade. I think it's an influential book, and it defends Christianity in the scientific and secular realm. Dinesh D'Souza debates the atheists, all the famous atheists. He debates around the world, and he's a great debater and got a sharp mind, and he does a good job of representing our side in these kinds of debates. So I think you'll appreciate that. By the way, I have some of his books available back in the back over there. If you'd like to buy one, you'll be able to do that probably in about 2 minutes after the end of the session today. By the way, the Vice President of Admissions for the King's College is Brian Nance, and he is with us down here in the front. He'll be back in the information booth after the chapel this morning. So if you'd like to pick up some information about the King's College, then you'd be welcome to do that. I think it would be a good option for the students of our school, and one that you should take a look at, because it's a good conservative kind of place, and I think you would value it and appreciate it. I've invited some parents to be here, and so I see a few parents, and so I thank you for coming to be a part of this as well. Dinesh D'Souza has written some very important books, not just What's So Great About Christianity, but his last book was Life After Death, The Evidence. I saw him on CNN a while back, where he was there representing the Christian faith. Even though he's a lay person, he was on a CNN program about what happens to us after we die, and he was there to represent the Christian point of view. And I was pretty impressed that it was a lay person that was chosen to represent Christianity and not a minister. You probably see him on the news because he would be an expert commentator on a variety of subjects, including terrorism and subjects like that. He's going to be on Glenn Beck's program on Wednesday of this week, talking about his newest book, The Roots of Obama's Rage. It's a great book about the president, and you would find it interesting to read, and I hope that you will read it because it's very valuable. Well, it's a pleasure to have Dinesh D'Souza with us to speak for chapel today. I'd like for you to give a great welcome, please, to Dinesh D'Souza.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm thrilled and delighted to be here to speak to you on behalf of the King's College, a Christian liberal arts college in the Empire State Building in New York City. I want to start, though, by talking about some of the big challenges that we face as Christians living in secular society. What I mean by this is that if you read the Bible, it tells you that you should contend for your faith. Contend means defend your faith. But that means something very different now than it would have 50 years ago. Why? Because 50 years ago, America was a society in which Christian assumptions were taken for granted. Everybody sort of accepted them, even people who weren't Christian. Today, however, we live in secular culture in which the assumptions of our society are not necessarily Christian. And we have seen in recent years a very remarkable phenomenon. It has been called the new atheism. And that is a group of very smart people, very influential people, who are attacking Christianity and attacking God. And these new atheists are having a big impact in the culture, in the media, in education, in the universities. The new atheists are people like the physicist Stephen Hawking, the Oxford biologist Richard Dawkins, the writer Christopher Hitchens, whom you can read in Vanity Fair magazine, the neuroscientist Sam Harris. So these are the so-called new atheists. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to discredit and really demolish Christianity. They're trying to make every Christian feel like an idiot, a moron, for believing in Christianity. Now, I have been in the last few years debating some of the leading atheists in America, mostly on college campuses, and sort of challenging them on their own terms. This is something I sometimes call Christian bilingualism. And by bilingualism, what I mean is the ability to speak a religious language in church or in a Christian school, but to be able to speak a secular language when you are in secular culture. What are these new atheists all about? What are they talking about, and what do they say? One of the things that they do is they come up to the young Christian and they'll say something like, "Hey Christian, you call yourself a Christian, but have you actually conducted an independent comparative investigation of all the great religions of the world?" No. You're a Christian pretty much because your parents are Christian. You're a Christian because you were born in Dallas, Texas, Seattle, Washington, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So you're a Christian by accident. If you had been born in Afghanistan, you might be a Muslim. Or had you been born in Tibet, you would most likely be a Buddhist. So in other words, how do you really know that your beliefs are true and everybody else's are not? Now, as a Christian, you might say, well, we have a holy book. But of course, other religions have their holy book, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, and so on. So how do you know that your holy book trumps their holy book? How do you know that when the world ends and the final phone call comes in, how do we know it's going to be the Christian God? So this is the voice of the new atheism. Or the new atheist will say, "Hey Christian, how can you believe in miracles? Are you crazy? We're living in the 21st century. Don't you agree that the world operates by scientific laws? Do you think these laws can just be suspended, that someone can walk on water or bring dead people back to life? This is absurd." The point I want to make is that as Christians, we are facing a skeptical attack on many of the core principles of our faith. And we have to learn to defend those principles. Another point you often hear the atheists say is they say Christianity and religion in general, belief in God, are responsible for the great crimes and wars and divisions of history. I was reading an article by one of the leading atheists, and he was saying, look at what the radical Muslims are doing in the name of Islam. That's what religion makes people do. It makes people fly planes into buildings. It makes people do terrible things in the name of God. This writer went on to say, why are the Israelis fighting the Palestinians? They're fighting about religion. Why are the Sunni and the Shia fighting in Iraq? They're fighting about religion. What about the Hindus and the Muslims fighting in Kashmir? They're fighting over religion. So the point is that it looks like, if you look around the world, this atheist says, looks like belief in God is sort of causes people to have all this conflict, all this war, all this division. And then he says, and look at history, the Crusades, the Inquisition, the religious wars, the Salem witch trials. He says any rational person is going to say that belief in God is not good for you. It's bad for you. It makes society far more divided and broken apart. A secular society without God would be more peaceful and more scientific. So this is the voice of the new atheism. Now, it's very important to realize that we need to have an effective Christian answer to this. And it's not enough to say, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, Christian, why do you believe what you do? You can say, I believe it because of the Bible, and you're right. But that argument was going to work if you're talking to another Christian. But if you're talking to someone who's not a Christian, or a Hindu, or a Jew, or a Buddhist, or an atheist, they might say, well, we don't accept the authority of the Bible to decide this matter. What other argument do you have? Now, as Christians, we need to find a way to communicate and defend our beliefs in secular society. In my case, I learned my Christianity first when I was very young. My grandparents taught me the basics of Christianity when I was 5 years old. But sometimes when I look back on it, I say that was crayon Christianity, right? It's a Christianity very simplified for my very young mind. That's how a lot of us learn the core basics of Christianity. But we need to, as we get older, develop a more mature, intellectual defense of Christianity that we can communicate to others. Now, I mentioned I've been debating some of the leading atheists around the country. It's a very weird experience because, well, the atheists are pretty weird guys. You know, I'm thinking, for example, of the philosopher Daniel Dennett. This is a big, burly Santa Claus of a man, and I debated him on his own campus, Tufts University. And as I came up on the stage, I look across the stage, and there's Santa. This big guy with a big white beard. And that was a little creepy to be debating him. But when I turned into the audience, what was even weirder was in the audience, strewn through the audience, were a dozen or so little Santas, followers of Big Santa, who had come to sort of support him and had tough questions in store for me. So this is the feeling of debating these guys. Here's what I want to do this morning. I want to look at a couple of the strongest arguments of the new atheism, and I want to give you or see if there is a way to counter those, to defend against them. And then I want to end by, in a sense, telling you a much broader and deeper way that you can prepare yourself to become what I'm going to call a truly dangerous Christian. What's a truly dangerous Christian? This is a Christian who goes out into the culture and makes other people tremble. You make them tremble. Why? Because you are really effective in being able to defend what you believe. You know not only what you believe, but you know why you believe it. Now, in a debate, you focus on the weak points of your opponent, right? You try to find, where's your opponent vulnerable? But that's not what I'm going to do here. I'm going to focus on the strong points of my opponent. Why? Because if you can defend against the strong points of the new atheism, then you've really got a sturdy foundation for what you believe. So I want to begin by telling you a couple of things about science. Why? Because the new atheism today, it marches behind the banner of science. What the new atheists say is they say, look, science is advancing and Christianity is retreating. Why? Because science is just a better way to explain the world. Science is based on reason. Christianity is based on faith. And faith is a bad word for the atheist because the atheist says, what is faith? Faith is what Scripture calls the evidence of things not seen. Not seen.